Welcome back to another video. This one is finally going to be my first deck profile for the One Piece card game. So in December, the newest set, or the first set, is going to be coming to the English release, and throughout the month of November, I'm going to be doing deck profiles basically on all the stuff that I think is cool. First one is going to be with Trafalgar Law. Hold on. How to pronounce Trafalgar Law? I think I'm just gonna call him T-Law, or just Law. So there's two reasons why I kind of gravitated towards Law. One of the reasons is because he's a red and green leader, which means you can play any of the red and green cards out of OP1. Personally, I believe that this is, or at least this game is, a little less closer to Dragon Ball and more closer to Digimon when it comes to the colors, where red is a little bit more aggressive and it has direct removal. It has the keyword with rush, or the rush keyword, which is exclusive to red. And then green has a lot of tap down effects, rest effects, KO effects, that type of thing. And putting those both together kind of creates a utility, tempo, a little bit of an aggro deck, which all those things I kind of like. When you look at the leader, he is a Supernova's Heart Pirates. He can play red and green, like I said. He is a 4 life, not 5, so that's something to keep in mind, most likely because you're just going to be dishing out a lot of attacks post like turn 3. His activate main is that you pay 2, you rest the 2 Dawn for that. If you have 5 or more characters, or 5 characters, which is the character limit, that's the only amount that you can actually have, return one of your characters to the owner's hand, and then play up to 1 character with a cost of 5 or less, of a different color than the return character from your hand. So basically, if you have a red character on your field, you can pick that up after you pay 2, and then you can play down a green character with energy cost of 5 or less, which is just a Dawn cost, really. I think this is really cool just because you can obviously pay higher cost things, a 5 cost for 2. And there are other cards like the Law card, one of the green Law cards, where both basically you can play out 1 and you can restand something that has rush or 3 or less and then swing, or maybe any of the other cards, like I said, with Zoro having rush, or even Nico Robin to KO something the following turn, so that way you don't have to worry about it being in rest. Or even the other Law where you can play it down and then you can pick up another card, put down maybe a Nami to look at the top 5, or grade things based on 4 different things. First one is going to be difficulty, and I think this deck in particular is probably between a 3 or 4. I would probably peg it as a 3 on a scale of 1 to 5, just simply because that it is 2 colors, which is already kind of double when it comes to deck building and just learning what is good for the deck and what you need to tape out and keep in, and the ratios and things like that. And not only that, to really make sure that you play out enough cards to get to that 5 limit to use the leader effect, and then use that in correlation with other effects. It's probably closer to a 4, to be honest. Because this is a beginner guide, again, this is mostly pretty straightforward plays, and as well as just cards to worry about. And then we have Thematic, which I think this has quite a lot of Supernovas, so I would put that as a 4 as well. Longevity, as in would you see this in the next couple sets, or anywhere in the future? Will this be power creeped, or power crept, I should say? I think this leader in itself, because it is dual colored, and as well as the leader effect is pretty good as we stand right now for the first set, and as well as the second set from what we've seen. I think it is going to be still a really good leader. It's already proven itself on the Asian tournaments and as well as overseas, so I don't see it really going anywhere for the next 2 sets. So a good little 3 or 4 there too. I'll put a 3. 1 being you better play it now, and 5 being you can probably play this forever. And the last and 4th thing is cost, which is going to be a little hard. The game isn't out just yet, but I would rather just throw that out there. If you're opening boxes, it might be a little bit expensive or costly, because there's a good amount of SRs. I would say like 4, 5, 6 different SRs in here, and I really don't know how expensive it's going to be out of the gate. So I would probably give it a 4, to be honest, just because it is going to be a pretty well-known deck, and it's not going to be surprising to see it everywhere. It means there's going to be a bit of a demand for it. Let's talk about the list. If you want to follow along, go ahead and click the link below. I'll put the One Piece card game.dev link down there so that way you can see everything that I'm going through. But I went ahead and sorted this through costs. And I think the biggest thing to really consider when it comes down to OP1 and just One Piece in general is just Dawn management and as well as cost curve. So a lot of Law's plays will kind of include a lot of the one drops. So like you're going to be playing a lot of one drops, so that way you can get them out pretty early and get to that 5 character point. And I don't know if it is the most optimum, but that's how I've been playing it so far and have had pretty good success just because, you know, I'm able to go back and forth with the leader effect. The first one is going to be Otama, which gives you the 2k counter. You've probably seen this in other lists and as well as just in general. She is pretty good. She doesn't have any attack power, but that's really not the reason why you play her. There's a number of reasons why you play her. So for instance, if you're going against a Pacifista blocker or a 6k blocker through on Don Flamingo, or if something is rested that is 7k or 6k, then now you can play this for 1, swing at it with a 5k and not really worry about them being able to counter out pretty easily. And as well as it is a really good effect, or target I should say, for the this guy right here, the 5-drop law, one of the 5-drop laws, where you can return that back to hand and then play out a 3 cost that we're going to go through in a second. But Otama's really good. You really want her in the hand, but if you don't play her in the hand, then you just play her just for 1 and then swing into something that's rested, or even reduce one of their blockers, so that way they're less incentivized with to block with that. Or if they do block with that, again, it's going to be easier for them not to counter out. Then we have Tony Chopper. I just hate his name so much, and his face. I just hate all of it. But he is a 1-cost blocker. Him and Beige or Big A. Mr. Gang Capone, Mr. Capone. He is both of these guys are pretty important because they're 1-cost blockers. You don't really like, you're already like, now I think in this iteration, which I messed up that one, this iteration I do have a lot more counter power, which another iteration, because of these blockers, you don't really have you're incentivized to play them on the field, right? So you want to keep making sure that you are paying the 1 Dawn to get these guys out and out of your hand, because they're just useless out of your hand. They are good targets for if you have literally nothing else for the law that we just looked at. So you can just play out another blocker. They're really good just to play out and get to that 5 character cost for the law effect as well. But just in general, blockers are really good. It's the 7 in general here, or in total here, for 1-cost blockers. And I think pretty much every single list in OP1 should have blockers. And if you're not, then you're doing something wrong. Nami at 2. I really do like it. This is a straw hat. This is a straw hat. These guys aren't, which is a bummer, but a lot of the good straw hat cards, well, a lot of the good cards are straw hat. I only bring this up because both Namis are good in what they do, because these guys, every single time that you play something, you kind of want to get something out of it, right? Which is the whole point of getting to that 5. Yeah, you want to get to that 5 characters to use the leader effect, but each time that you do that, you want to make sure that you're doing something with that Dawn or with that 1 cost. So when you play that Nami, now you have an extra Dawn to use for your leader to swing with, or to another character, which is probably going to be your rush character afterwards. And as long as they don't remove this, which usually people don't, but if they do, it's usually through like a Nico Robin or something else like that, or to tap it down and then just swing at it. So this is really good. It's another straw hat. This is a straw hat, and Nami is a straw hat, which is probably going to be one of your best openers to look at the top 5, get a rush character or another straw hat crew like Zoro or Tony Chopper. So that's pretty much the red 1 drops that are purposeful. Bonnie's great because you know, this Bonnie's interesting, just like the other dude with the bald head and I can never say his name. He looks like Luffy, but he's not. I don't know the lore. Stop it. Bonnie's cool because she is cheap to use. So you can just like open up with 2 Bonnies, play them both. And then if you're going second and then pass it on, they usually don't kill them. And then you basically use 2 more Dawn to get 2 more cards out of your deck, probably to get a Beige, this 2-cost counter, the Killer, any of the laws or even the X-Drake. So any of those are going to be great to get, just to use and just to have. And Bonnie's interesting because these like pay one, rest one are basically a counter in itself, because any good player doesn't want you to keep drawing cards, because that is really hard in the One Piece card game. You basically want to make sure that you're swinging at this, which means they're not swinging at your life, which is always a good thing. It's just basic card game practices. But again, play these guys out, get the effects, etc., etc. I like Sanji. Sanji's cool. I think I have lowered him more and more. But when someone is just focusing on board control through attacks, adding a life and just paying this for 2 and just having a 2 cost counter is pretty good. And the time that you actually do attack with this is not too bad, because now you can go to a 5k and then attach 2 Dawn with it, and then just swing with for a 7k for the time that you do play it. You want to use this sparingly. It is a target for Nami as well. I've been using it as 2k fodder, but for in a pinch, I mean, he's not that bad to pay 2 and swing. I might be wrong in saying that he is like kind of okay, but as a 4 life leader, you don't really want to bring down your life unless you really absolutely have to. Scratchman, another 2 cost counter. I actually like this guy because he is just only a 2. You put 2 Dawn on him, you can rest one of their blockers in that and just swing 5k. He's just really simple. He's a supernova target for Bonnie, and overall pretty good. Killer is awesome too. Killer is cool because with Law you can play another 3 or less from your hand, and he is going to be one of those 3 or less. For 3 it's not that bad either, but for 2, for a Law and as well as a Killer, and as well as the trigger effect to play him out, he's going to be a good one to include. We have Nico Robin, which again is another 3 costs for Law, and as well as just in general, like you just want to have these cheaper cards like Reizo, Killer, and Nico Robin that do things for you, and not really worry too much about the color parity that you have to kind of keep up with, like red and green. Being able to KO something 3 or less is really good. Same thing for both of these guys. Is just really board removal, which is why I like the red and green combo. And then we also have Reizo again. One of those things of like, they probably need to get rid of this because you don't really want to have you draw so much. I think Reizo is cool because he is a 4k, just like Nico Robin. So it's pretty cheap just to put 1 Dawn on under him and just have them threaten a little bit there. And then pretty much as we get into the higher costs, ironically enough, is where you want to start attacking. You know, where sure, these guys are like the early gamers, but at the same time, it's really just to make sure that they don't have a board to swing at your board to make sure that you keep up with 5. And then all the 1-drops and searchers are to get the other things like the higher cost in order to play them and control your tempo, or control the match tempo. And basically, again, I've been referring back to Law on the 5 cost, but this is the 5 cost lineup here between Luffy, X-Drake, Law, and as well as the other Law. Zoro's cool because again, it's probably the prime target to play either for 3, because he is just a 5k. I usually just put them that point down for 3, swing with the 5k on turn 3, or basically, yeah, turn 2, basically turn 2, whenever you have 4 or 3 Dawn, and just go at it. But Law is cool because he is a blocker that can protect this card and others, and it's pretty easy to defend with. On play, you're able to again return a character to hand and then play a 3 cost afterwards. Pretty much all the ones that we talked about, and they're all really good targets, to be honest. And just, it is really dependent on each effect that you want to use this for. And then we also have X-Drake. I like X-Drake. He doesn't have a trigger effect. I wish he did like Killer, but you have to either pay 5 or pay the 2 with your leader effect and then play him down for a 4 cost or less rested. I wish this was 5 costs, but I think that'll be a little broken. I think 4 and 3 are usually the targets of, like, you know, Nico Robins and the Killers and I don't know, the who's and things like that, right? So like those are the things that you really want to target. He is a +1 1000 counter as well for the Supernovas tag. Which weirdly enough, I don't. This is bad. I don't really know the lore for Luffy, but I guess he does have that as well, and it doesn't specify green or red, so I guess that's good for the Luffy. Luffy and Zoro are pretty much your prime attackers. If you run out of gas, well, that is probably the reason why you do. Law, the other two laws are good to swing with. This guy, man, I'm jumping around right now, but you kind of you'll understand as you go when you start using the leader effect which ones you want to use and when you don't want to use. I think the Luffy is great in the fact that you can play it 4-2 to replace like an X Drake. You can come back and take that X Drake and then play it back the next turn if you want to KO something 4 or less when they start going back on the snapback. Or on Luffy, where you can pay it for 2, use the remaining Don to put 2 under it, and now you're swinging for 8k. I think the Luffy, Sanji, and as well as Zoro are better in the Zoro deck. But again, they have utility here because of the leader effect here, where you can just pay for 2. It's just so much better when you like circumstantial better. But generically better, Zoro leader, probably the next deck I do. It's probably a little bit better in general, but that is just my opinion. These guys don't have any counters, which is why I reduced this law from 4 to 3. You want to say later into the game, right? It is searchable through Bonnie, which is why Bonnie is super important, why you want to mulligan for her. The remaining guys here are going to be the event cards. The other law, which basically you can switch a 5 or less as active. So if you swing it with this, or 6 or 7, which I always recommend is swing with 7. Or if you swung with the Luffy or Zoro, now you're just going right back into it with the Luffy for an 8k swing that they can't block with, and as well as just another 6k body, which is just great. I recently added Captain Kid here just because he is super annoying to deal with against any deck like this. Like someone going against you, it is super annoying to deal with. And I think he's good. I think he's good. You have a lot of good 3-drop targets. Killer and as well as Reizo is going to be pretty cool things to do, because you're going to be swinging with this the next turn after you use Reizo, and then you swing Reizo and then it draws you 1 because both of them are rested. Basically they can't attack anything other than this card if it's in rest mode anyway. But you should know this if you're truly a beginner to the game itself. He is quite the menace for really a lot of decks, because he is an 8 cost and an 8k, and a lot of decks, pretty much if not all of them, have to swing into it to remove it. So this is probably going to be a 10 Dawn play. So late into the game, this is where you kind of want to mitigate most of your attacks and just like make people focus on it. So Kid's great. It's good in really any green deck, especially if you have really good 3-drop targets to play for free. And then as you play those 3-drop targets, you can use your leader effect as well, as long as this guy stays, in order to continue to play more and more things. I think he just is a little awkward considering, but if you set up your blockers in the best way possible, and as well as hold enough counter juice, then he is going to survive and do pretty well. So I recommend, again, to mulligan for blockers or Benny, and then hold these guys for late game, or at least post turn 3, so that way you can start using those effects that I talked about before. And then lastly, the 2 event cards. Yeah, these are event cards, man. I don't know what to tell you. I am not too big of a fan for event cards. Obviously, okay, well, let me go through these first. This is a 2 cost where you can get 4,000 for the battle for one of your characters, or your leader, and then you KO something 4,000 or less. And then the trigger effect is that you minus 10,000 power for one of their leader or character cards, which is pretty cool against something like Kaido, so you don't have to really worry about that anymore. But I will say that people probably have their opinions about Gum Gum. They will probably go with the 1 cost either green or red card. I would say those are interchangeable. If you don't prefer having 2 up or 2 Dawn up passing to your opponent, I think this is going to be not for you if you don't want to do that. But Jet Pistol is super good. There's so many good things or threats that are 6k or less that we just talked about, especially in the mirror, where Jet Pistol just kind of takes care of it, and you don't have to worry about it just for 4 Dawn, or if it gets triggered from your main. If I was a betting man, I would probably just play 4 of these and just hope that they're in my life. But if we look at the cards real quick before we get out of here, because I am just rambling at this point, the 1 cost event cards are pretty much the ones that I was talking about before. So I think Radical Beam is cool because it's a 2 cost and then, or 2k for the battle, and then 2 or less life. Because you're a 4 life leader, you're probably gonna get there pretty quickly, especially through Sanji. And just 1 for 4 is pretty good. And then of course the trigger, you can get that 1000 for the turn, which is not bad, to be honest. Some of these aren't released. Guard Point is going to be the one out of the starter deck where it is 3000 power for the turn, or the same trigger effect that we're talking about as well. And then of course Scalpel is the alternative, where you can switch one of your Dawns to active, and the trigger is switched to 2 to active instead for 2000 power for the counter, that is. So I think I would say Scalpel is probably the, I don't know. I would have to test a little bit more, but I think in my experience, Scalpel, Guard Point, Radical Beam, and of course Paradise Waterfall are all options for you where you can. It just depends on what kind of removal that you have in your deck. How many 2k counters do you already have in your deck that you don't really want events for? Is it searchable as well? Because Supernovas is searchable. Saraha Crew is over here, searchable as well. And then Guard Point is also searchable through Nami. So it just depends on what your playstyle is and what your deck already has. And if you're going against this one that I just went through, it I would recommend to try out Scalpel first and then maybe look into the other 2 afterwards. But I prefer the 2 cost, and as well as the other 2 costs through removal, that is. But let me know what you think in the comments below. I'll probably be a little bit more structured next time. Sorry for rambling, but as we get into One Piece and as well as all the decks that I like, it's gonna take some time to find a good system for it. Either way, I'll see you in the next one.